everybody to the Public Works Subcommittee of the Revere City Council. And I don't see a flag around, so we'll pass on that. We'll just do it at the council meeting. So with that, the only item we have on our agenda tonight is a motion number 2231 presented by Councilor Keefe, that the mayor requests the DPW and the city engineer to amend the rules and regulations in accordance with section 2.63.070B1, public way disturbances and occupancy permits, so as to provide notification to and approval by the ward councilor prior to the issuance of a curb cut permit. Councilor President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the last meeting, I had also gotten some feedback from peers to add the entire city council, because there's many large councils that want to be involved in this process as well. But just to kind of sum it up, first of all, this is in no way, shape, or form a slight on the DPW or the Public Works Department and Mr. Agenzio, who handles most of these, and I think he handles them all and handles them really well. But as you know, sometimes the more eyes you have on something, it gives us the ability to maybe see something that someone wasn't looking for. And I use the example of a home on a really tight lot that was able to convert from a very small home to a very large two-family with no community input and no city council or zoning board of appeals input. That very much upset the residents in that neighborhood. And again, it wasn't. It was really something that just kind of accidentally got through. So I think by having this additional layer, just talking and seeing some cities have it, some cities don't, it might help in just catching areas where we know either parking isn't adequate, street parking isn't adequate, and by removing more curbing, you're going to lose more street parking, and or by at times over expansion of a property in a dense neighborhood or an area that can't really afford to have any more expansion. So I think that those would help. By having some city council input would help help protect the neighborhoods. And then lastly, just wanting to protect residents who are walkers, as we also know. People that walk or people that use wheelchairs or kids that ride bikes. There's a reason we have curbs on our streets. They're there to protect the pedestrians. So if we continue to have, and I'm not saying we have too many, but if we have too many curb cuts being granted, at times that's going to take away the protection for pedestrians. So that's what I have, and I'd love to collaborate with Paul or Mr. Agenzio and also the city council to see if we can do something to help make this work a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Nassau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly agree with everything the President has said. I love the idea that we strike out ward council and put the Revere City Council. That makes more sense. We do, as ward councils, share a day-to-day life with the residents, more so than at large, because we get most of the calls in reference to our particular area. But we should not exclude our council brothers and sisters who are at large, because they have as much input on the community as we do. I think this is vital in terms of, and I think I said it previously, in terms of what's happening to our community today. We're restricted with so many things that we're starting to get something good going with parking restrictions. And with that, creative activity becomes part of the homeowner's mainstay. So they're all looking to sort of circumvent the whole object of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to limit the cars to people who are registered in our community and live in that particular household and in that area. Now, if an individual has a home and he turns that into a business, and he starts making profiteering from it, and he starts making these 2 bedrooms, 8 bedrooms by just placing mattresses off the floor and renting them out on a daily basis or a weekly basis, whatever it might be, some of these individuals, or quite a few of them, come with cars. And so that impacts our neighborhoods drastically. With Airbnb and their mindset, they've already destroyed the concept of neighborhoods, because we don't even know who our neighbors are any longer, based on the fact that you open the door and right next to you are strangers. And that's not a value that we're trying to have for our community. We're trying to place a neighborhood-friendly value for all the residents of our community. We don't want, not that we don't welcome them, but there's proper places for them. You know, if someone comes and enjoys our community and they go to a hotel, well, we know they're visitors to our city. They're residing temporarily at a hotel. If they do Airbnb, we don't know who's there from 1 week to the next or day to day. And that gives a very uncomfortable feeling for a lot of people who live and reside in our community. That's the experience I've shared with quite a few of the residents of Ward 3. They express a real strong desire of returning our community back to a neighborhood-friendly community. And so this will put it in place. I think this is a great idea, Mr. President. I think that, you know, obviously we've opened our arms to it. The council has been pretty receptive to it. And we look forward to this happening. These are little critiques that we can do as membership who help with the administration and governing our community to make it a better community for all. And so I think this is a step in the right direction, and I applaud you for your efforts in putting this forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Council Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thinking this is a great motion. I don't know if anyone's aware of it, but we already have an ordinance which requires a parking driveway no larger than 20 feet wide for a two-family house. That's already there. You know, Councilor Granasso mentions the fact that we don't know who our neighbors are. A lot of people moving into the city, and he's 100% right. And he mentions the other problems with Airbnb. And one of the major problems that I see is the revenue that we are losing when somebody doesn't rent a room at the Comfort Inn for $300 a night. The city loses $18 every night that room is rented. If it's $200 a night, we lose $12. And you start adding that up throughout a calendar year, and you'll find out that you're coming into an awful lot of lost revenue in the city. And this is money that we sorely cannot afford to lose. It's important to the city. It makes us be able to function properly. So I think this is a great motion. I'll support it 100%. And I think the idea of having all of the councilors included in this is a good idea, because we all have eyes. We're all out there.
Council Powers, can't hear you if you're still talking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Somebody else? Mayor, councilors? Oh, okay. You know, I had a problem with it as the ward councilor giving approval, but, you know, I believe we already passed an Airbnb ordinance. And anybody that does that now also, I believe, also has to go through site plan review, and they may have to go through zoning. But a lot of these things, and I'm going to let Paul talk, people can do by right. You know, the width of a driveway is minimal 18 by 9, 18 deep, 9 wide. So I'm going to, you know, that's my thought on it. I'm not totally convinced of this motion, but I'm going to, if I can ask Paul to come in and put his 2 cents in, appreciate it.
Sure, I'll be happy to, Counselor. When I know this is specific, or I think it was specific to curb cuts. So now when I go out and look at a curb cut, there's a specific set of rules and criteria that I apply when I'm looking at a proposed curb cut. There's certain widths, lengths, green space, not blocking an egress, and there's a set of rules that govern that. So if the concern is that you're worrying about conversions from one families to two families, then I think you need to kind of take a step back and maybe change the rules so that when I go out or ISD goes out to evaluate a property, there's a specific set of rules we go by. And I understand the council's concern, but you're kind of coming into an enforcement part of what's going on with the city and what's going on with these properties. So if you need, or if you want to send more things to the Zoning Board of Appeals, tighten up the restrictions, tighten up the rules, and then that would force more property owners to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then the city council and the neighborhood. And that's the appropriate place for everyone's concerns. And if there's a set of rules that apply to a particular property on one street, it needs to apply to the same property on another street. So if a neighbor objects on one street, even though that particular property is meeting the rules, and on another street there's no neighborhood opposition, seems like you're kind of opening ourselves up to the city lawyers going after us. So I know the particular property that Councilor Keefe was referring to. That particular property had an existing 10-foot driveway. I allowed the property to expand another 8 feet to 18 feet. 2 spots. One was existing, and by allowing this curb cut, and added an additional 1 spot. Now, this property then went before ISD to convert from a 1-family to 2-family. It didn't go through the planning, site plan review. Some properties go through site plan review, some don't. So maybe that's another thing that can be looked at, that all conversions going from 1-family to 2-family go to site plan review, so you're assured of applying the same rules to all properties. So that's my take on it. I think you might get down a little bit of a slippery slope every time a curb cut comes before the DPW, and I get probably maybe 10 a month. Would those then come for a vote before the council? I don't know quite sure how the council would address each curb cut.
And maybe before I go, Mr. President, just, and I don't know the property involved, but just by listening to Paul, even if they went to a 2-family, they would need 4 spaces. Am I correct, Paul? And they only increased it by 1.
Well, yes, that's true. To convert to a 2-family, you need 4 spaces. What I did, or when I allowed this curb cut, it allowed for a 2nd spot. Now, when it went before ISD, maybe they interpreted it differently. I don't know. But it went from 1 space to 2 spaces.
But if they went from 1 to 2, they could still only have one apartment, because
That's true. Yes. So now, but when it went before ISD, I don't know. Maybe it was interpreted differently. I really don't know.
did they allow a 2nd apartment?
Yes, the conversion did go through. In fact, I drove by there again today just to take a look. And Councilor Keefe may have more information on that, but
And it's in an RB zone,
yes,
2-family zone?
yes.
Okay, Councilor Keefe?
Well, again, the greatest issue is the lack of input from the community and the lack of input from neighbors when you have a congested area and a property that, like I said, it was a very small property on a very small lot that it was a surprise that there was no community input when they're calling me, and I was assuring them that any conversion without the proper parking would have to go in front of the city council or zoning board of appeals. Of course, that didn't happen. And again, that's not Paul's fault. That was, again, I don't want to put any other departments under the bus here, but it just didn't, it wasn't handled properly. And then it was, it was tandem parking. It's a whole mess. But the second biggest point about this all is, again, you know, name a street, especially a congested street in the city. And Ira, I know that your ward has a lot of them, but if you're telling me that, you know, I have one parking spot in my house right now, and I have more than that. If I have one, and, you know, I have enough space to add another one in front of my house. Now I add that, my next door neighbor who sometimes parks in front of my house, or sometimes the neighbor across the street parks in front of me, they just lost that street parking. So they should be able to, I mean, ultimately, there should be neighborhood input on that. And the reason I say that is they live there. So they're just as right, they have just as much right to park on the street as I do. So for me to be able to take that and all of a sudden claim it as private property, I don't understand why they wouldn't want to have some more say from the community members. And of course, it's going to vary from street to street. The same thing happens with pretty much all of the zoning board of appeals. They require community input, and they're going to change from neighborhood to neighborhood depending on how much the neighbors really appreciate it or how much they don't. So that's just, it's very consistent with how we kind of operate on much greater things right now. Thank you.
Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been fairly informative. I think we have to move quickly to make all conversions before site plan review. I thought they automatically did. So I'm being re-educated here tonight. That's one of the things I'll do right away is put a motion in to have all conversions, always have everything go before site plan review, before any action is taken. Now, this seems to be a unique situation where a curb cut gave them another spot and they got a two-family, and I don't understand that.
I don't either.
It doesn't meet the parking requirements without a special permit or a zoning board of appeal relief. I don't see how they got it. That's a flaw. We got to find out how that's allowed to happen. If it was a building department issue, we got to clear that up. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but we need to make sure that that's tightened up. So out of this motion comes a lot of good things tonight, that we got to tighten up some regulations. And I appreciate your input, Paul, because you educated me that people are getting away with conversions without site plan review. I don't think that was ever intended. If it was a bad oversight. So we got to correct it. Thanks.
Are there a set of rules, I mean, written rules as far as conversions or something that we use as a guide to go by if we were going to ask them to be adjusted?
Yeah, that could certainly be provided to the council. All the rules that apply to curb cuts, all the rules that apply to conversions from one family to two family as in respect to setbacks from the rear yard and the side yard. And like I say, I think there's a lot of sense in, if that's the concern, change the rules, but so you're still at least applying the same rules across the city or across each zoning.
Perfect.
Rather than a kind of neighborhood opinion type thing where maybe, one street neighbors are getting along with each other and another street that's not the case, and that enters into some decision making.
Okay. Any other councilors that haven't spoken that want to say something? Just raise your hand. No? Okay. Councilor Zambudo, I understand what you want to do. And, that's okay, but I think it's more even site plan review that's more variance issues, which would go to ZBA after site plan review. So there's a procedure that we still have to let everybody go with in order to get to that point.
Not to interrupt you, Counselor, but when they do come before site plan review, which I sit on, is again, we look at a set of rules, a set of zoning rules. And if people meet all those requirements, then it's by right, and then the permit is granted. So if you want maybe a little less conversion from 1 to 2, you need to tighten those rules. So then it forces the ZBA to become involved, and then the neighborhood input, is appropriate.
Right. Can we get a set of those rules before we do any action on this motion? Leave it in committee and have Paul give us a copy of those set of rules for conversions and curb cuts and stuff like that. And then we can make a good, solid decision on which way we want to go in this thing.
Great.
Any comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that works for me, and I'd be more than happy to and willing to work on this together. I've seen the set of rules, but yeah, there's definitely some ability to create more rather than just checking all the boxes, having some sort of guidance from Paul and us. So, be happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing that, I don't think it should be the city council that gets deep into the minutia of all this, of these decisions. We have the site plan review, we have ZBA, and the ZBA can still let the residents in the neighborhood say their piece. But I'd like to see the rules and give site plan review some guidance and what we think those rules should be adjusted to. Okay?
It's all good.
Anything else? Okay, with that, I think we're going to leave this in committee for now. And we'll have a future meeting and discuss it further and come up with some solution on it. Okay?
Great.
With that, being no other business, I will adjourn this meeting and the council meeting will follow in a short while. Thank you all.
No further business.
Thank you.
No, actually, we're still on the air.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So everybody be aware. I think we want to mute everybody just in case.